Not ready for you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't tell.
We gotta turn all the mics on.
Should we set Sam here about for a recommendation from the state since we're now in a moderate range?
Yeah, Matt's gonna say all of that before you make a decision.
Okay.
So don't even say, do we have any?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, do I have a motion to come out of executive session and reconvene?
Motion.
Motion, okay.
Monday,
At this point, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Harris for information.
Thank you, Mrs. Dissing. I want to share 3 different things we received this past week from the Department of Education and Public Health, those different departments. So the first thing we received this past Monday was the Department of Health assigned each county in the state a certain category. They used either low, moderate, or high
With?
based on the positive rate and the incident for 100. Westmoreland County is considered to be moderate. They also did it by school district, and we received that information today. And Penn Trafford School District is considered to be moderate as well, based on the positive rate of 4.18 and the incident for 100, which is 26.8. When schools are moderate, the recommendation for the school is to do a hybrid or an online approach. The second information we received, it came out Friday, and I did send this out to parents because we were addressing this information in the school last week, and it dealt with what happened if you do have a case. Well, on Friday, we received the information from the Department of Education regarding guidance to school with positive cases in the schools. The district did mail this out on Friday, like I said, and it does state that schools in the moderate phase, like Penn Trafford, if you had 1 case, you would not close the schools. You would have to clean the area, and the public health staff would direct close contacts to quarantine. If you was the moderate, like Penn Trafford, you would have, and you had 2 to 4 cases in the same building, or multiple school buildings with individuals who are not in the same household, they would recommend that you would close school for 3 to 5 days, clean the area, and the public health staff would direct the close contacts to quarantine. And if you had 5 or more cases using the same criteria, they would recommend that you would close for 14 days, but it emphasizes that you could vary by level of community transmission and the number of cases. The third thing we received today was that the new information regarding the mask mandates in school. Last week when we talked about it, we said it was for any time you cannot be within 6 feet of each other. Today we were told that no matter what student is in school, they gave us some exceptions, but they said regardless of the 6 feet rule, so even if we were doing a different approach, all students would still be required to wear a mask. I wanted to have time to discuss those information, but I also wanted to go over the data that we have at the school right now currently coming back based on our information. Trafford Elementary, we have 65% of the students responded that are coming back. Sunrise 85, McCall 76, Level Green 85, Harrison Park 77, Penn Middle School 81, Trafford Middle School 83%, and the high school was 84%. When you're looking at all the different class sizes and case scenarios, I do feel that the elementary and middle school, we do have less number of children per the building, and the class size, we have less than the high school. I do feel concerned about the high school because we have 84% of the kids coming back, and if you take the 1,100 plus students, in addition to the 100 staff members, you do have a building of 1,200. And I realize that the building is designed for a larger capacity, but that is concerning, whereas we have certain class sizes in the building as high as 32 in some cases, compared to the elementary school. So I am worried about the high school based on the new criteria that was just released on Monday regarding the moderate, due to the transmissions and the number of students in the building. The other information we have received is we did have some parents interested in the hybrid, but we didn't really have enough support for the hybrid across the districts, because when we did the survey, we have about 117 comments that desire some form of the hybrid. We have about 60 emails prior to Monday, and since we talked about it last week, I did receive 32 more. So we did have, most of the support wasn't for the hybrid, but when we did our original survey, our hybrid was not the same as what some people are calling the hybrid now. When we offered our hybrid, it was either in school or basically what we're doing online with students who just want to be online. We never truly offered like a 2-day approach or a 3-day approach. But that's just some different information I want to discuss. But let's go back to what I discussed first, and that is with the Department of Health, and maybe Christina can give us some information on Penn Trafford and all the schools in Westmoreland County being moderate.
Okay. So the governor's order, it's not an order, it's a recommendation that was offered as an additional tool for schools to use in their decision making on what the reopening for their particular district will look like. So the governor, through the Department of Ed, gave a chart that looks at the level of transmission of COVID-19 in your county. So your county is considered moderate. And then with the understanding that you're moderate, the recommendation was to either do some type of blended instruction or to do all online. So I think that terminology blended is also used for hybrid, meaning some are in school while some are receiving instruction at home. But I want to be real clear that this was a recommendation, and that the Department of Ed, as well as the governor, understands that you have a local school board, you have a community that understands its students, its buildings, its class sizes. So when you hear Dr. Harris talking about specific numbers for your buildings, that's where the members of your board will be looking at decision making for PT alone, Penn Trafford alone. So the governor gave that guidance Monday. It was like lunchtime. And so school districts are scrambling to understand what does that mean. So they're not required to follow it. It's just another data point to use in their decision making. As far as the mask rule, that's an actual order by the governor signed, and it was revised today to state that no matter the distancing in your buildings, that you must at all times have the mask on, except for when students are eating or a planned 10-minute break in their day. So that's the new guidance that was just issued today. And did you want me to cover anything else, Dr. Harris?
Yeah, the transmission where they give you the cases for the 1, the 2 to 4 cases.
Okay, so there's additional guidance on, a lot of people have that question, what happens if someone tests positive, a student or a staff member? And prior to this recent guidance, the response on behalf of school districts was that, we have to call the Department of Health and follow their guidance. And that's still part of the plan, that's part of the district's plan, but the Department of Ed has issued a decision-making tree and a tool that says, if you're in a county, again, we're moderate here in Westmoreland, and if you have 1 positive case in your district, you don't have to shut down, but you're required to do extensive cleaning. And certainly that 1 individual would be removed from the educational programs. If you have 2 to 4 positive cases, whether that's staff or students, you have to shut down, whether you look at it as it's a particular building that has that number, for 3 to 5 days. And then it goes from that point 5 to 7, again, still understanding that you're in this moderate level of transmission, that you'll have to shut down, whether it's a building or a couple of buildings, for 14 days. So that's new guidance that was just issued as well. So with all of these changes, that's your board is trying to certainly follow recommendations. Again, use their understanding of Penn Trafford, the local decision making, to certainly put the best interest of the health and safety of PT staff and PT students. Anything else?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just kind of want to give the board an opportunity to talk about some of those points. First of all, when we got the Department of Health, we did see it last Monday, and at that point it was still a recommendation for it. I think what hit me hard about the high school was when we got the piece of information on Friday about the transmission rate and the class sizes and what to do with the school closure. So there was a lot of information we just received within the last week. I do hate the fact that this is late notice in the school year when we receive this, but to be honest, we have the information now, so we need to address it, and we need to make sure we plan for it. I kind of look at it as a snow day. Sometimes you don't get that information to 5 minutes before the buses are about to go out, but if you get that information, you have to do something with it. And I know I always take my road crew 100%, whatever they recommend. When I'm looking at this, and I know we have a lot of things to consider with class size reductions, we do have a low class count at the elementaries because we've always kept a small teacher ratio there. And even with the students who are planning on doing the online approach, or some students are actually doing homeschool, we've sort of reduced the numbers there and at the middle schools. At the high school, even with the projected 84% of the parents, I do worry when you see that 84% of the kids is 1,100, and you have a huge staff of about 120. So we do have a lot of students at the high school and staff in the building. I mean, that is one thing. So when we're looking at this, you know, that's why I said I was the most concerned about the high school. And I don't know what everyone else is, and then we talked. And it's just the approach. That's one thing we can discuss now. Some considerations for that. So, does any board member have a comment regarding the news we got from last Monday about the Department of Health in West Warren County in the moderate range?
I have one comment that does relate to that subject. They said if we have a case, we'd be required to do extensive cleaning, and I understand that. But it's my understanding we've ramped up our cleaning now, where we're doing extensive cleaning every day, right?
We do.
So that would be a proactive measure. Is there something that we could, if we have a case, that we would make it more extensive than what we're doing now, or?
No, you're really up to cleaning throughout the school district in every single building in every single way. So I'm not worried about more cleaning, or I think what the plan our guys have come up, our maintenance department have come up with is pretty solid.
Yeah, the information I received seems like we're doing about as much as you can do with new agents, new products, more emphasis put on the cleaning. But I just wanted to make that as a comment. The public knows that we are doing it.
When you're talking about the different cases, Mr. Leonard, I know the information we got from Secretary of Education, Pedro Rivera, was that this year expect to change your school's plans a great deal, because what you might start off with, you might have to alter based on the health data or based on the transmission cases. For example, if we were at the high school and there was different two cases, we might already have to go to the online approach if we're closed down for 5 to 7 days. And some of our students, it might not be positive, they might have to quarantine for up to 14 days if they have some contact. So we also have to know those students won't be in the school, they will be online too. So this is information, and when you look at it, it's kind of telling you about the whole year. you say, we will be taking extreme measures, but we also, when something does happen, we will have to actually follow the guidelines and recommendations. So you might see your school closed throughout the year, and we might see us talking about doing different models throughout the year as well.
Yes, that's what the board's discussion was. We don't expect that we.
Mr. Leonard, they're saying you need to, your microphone needs to be, they can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's all right.
I've been talking all this. So basically, we as a board recognize the fact that we're not able to target every problem and solve it now, but we're subject to change, and we're going to be moving forward in a fashion to address anything that comes up. And that's what you just said, and I said it in less words.
If I can make a comment to the public as well, it's difficult because our plans were made. We were basically set, ready to do what we planned, but then when you get a call, as like yesterday, that all of a sudden the mask changed. And we have to be able to be adaptable enough to do what's best. And I consider this board, the consideration, we were meeting from 5:15 until 7. We still need to meet more. That's why we had the recess to just further discuss what is best. And the consideration here is always what's best for the student, the teacher, the parents. So it's not that easy to say, well, this is what's best for the kids. No, have the teachers in mind, have the parents in mind. So the discussions on the board, it's not a unanimous board that, oh boy, we're not clones, we don't all agree. But we do agree that we want to do what's best for our kids, for our parents, for our community. So with that in mind, that's why the extra recess was taken to further discuss, and as said, we'll probably make changes during the school year. We hope not, except make it better. But just to let you know, it's not been easy making decisions.
Matt, this is Scott. I wanted to sort of pose a question to you in the group with regards to your earlier comments that you had mentioned with regards to class sizes, in particular at the high school. Knowing that in the elementaries as well as the middle school that the class sizes are smaller, is it a logical consideration then at this point that knowing that there is the option out there of a hybrid, as Christina had mentioned with regards to tool, that we would consider maybe at the high school level doing a hybrid as at least a starting point because of the class sizes there?
I would only consider as a starting point. I don't want to say it's the end all, like we're doing it for the year. I don't want to give any, we might end up doing that based on data or health concerns or what comes, with different things down their line, but I would strongly consider starting, and I know we don't have, we've done everything else with communication from our surveys with our parents, and we do have a very high percent of kids coming back, but you also have to look at it. We don't want to have a high percent of kids coming back if they're only going to be shut down, and we want to make sure it's safe for all the students at the high school, as well as all the other levels, but really at the high school with the class size and everything that was given to us the last week on Monday and Friday with the cases. It kind of makes you definitely look at what you're doing for children. We were gung-ho to go back. We want to go back. I still do. I just said, do we need to take a slower approach with the high school and maybe study it to see, so we know we're completely ready safety. I know, and that's one of those things we haven't talked to our parents about. We send surveys home. We kind of said what our approach was. Unfortunately, it just seems like the data just last month, and with everything we got from the county, it's just trends that they recommend. Seriously looking at keeping the students, the 6 feet apart.
And I'd like to add something. Based on the information we got on Friday, if we have a student at the high school that tests positive, every person at the high school that has come in contact with that student within 6 feet has to quarantine. A student at the high school can literally be with 6 or 7 different groups of other students. So if, say, in a particular class, maybe they have 5 or 6 people that are within 6 feet of them. That means that in every class, times 6, we could have 36 kids or more that have to quarantine. So therefore, I would like to see us minimize the number of kids that are within 6 feet of one particular student. And that's kind of like I sort of think we should try to do a hybrid at the high school so we can minimize the classroom size and minimize the number of students that would be within 6 feet of any given student.
That is the main thing, is right now, even if we do it, we set up some test rooms, and we were thinking it should be 14 to 15 students if you want to get to 6 feet. And Mr. Iglesias, I know we tried this before, and then right when we started this process in June, is that what you want to describe what we did in Mr. Moses on the classrooms?
Yeah, you know, we did some measurements and tried to figure out if we have a class with 30 kids, in best case scenario, we can only get about 15 kids in there and keep them 6 feet apart. So to keep that distance in high school is really not realistic. It's not feasible, and the high school is problematic. And I will tell you that, you know, I am disappointed, as well as the rest of you who have exhibited your frustrations regarding the state's late notice on the number of releases. You know, the face covering issue that was released today, which, you know, blindsided everybody, and then we had the information that was released last week. You know, all that information should have been provided to us in June, so that when we make our health and safety plans, you know, we're doing it the best way possible, and everybody knows the plan, and everybody can understand the plan. Because let's be realistic, guys. You know, we're at the middle of August right now, and the pandemic, truly, when you look at the number of cases, weekly cases, we're sitting around a dozen cases per week as a 7-day average, which is exactly where we were at the end of June when we approved our plan. So truly, nothing has changed with the pandemic. The number of cases are just as bad or the same right now as they were at the end of June. Nothing's changed. We did have a spike. Obviously, we had a spike around the 4th of July, but has steadily declined since then. So the pandemic now is very similar to what it was at the end of June when we approved our plan. But that being said, the governor and the Department of Education issued these guidelines or recommendations that said that we should do this if that is in place and we're in moderate. And it is difficult for a school district to make a decision whenever the state is saying you should do A and we decide to do B. It's difficult to make those decisions as a board member and as administrator. So
When it changes every other day.
changes every other day. And you know, hey, we'll get another issue or another mandate tomorrow. So, you know,
We got 3 this past week since last Monday. We got 3 things that came down and recommendations. And I know the first one was a recommendation for the moderate Department of Health, but it's still a recommendation. And I also know that the other 2 things we received too, like, what are we going to get next? And it has me worried for the safety of the students.
Well, especially when they restrict, every new thing that comes out of Harrisburg seems to be a tighter restriction than the one before. I mean, last week we were able to have students not wear a mask if they were spaced at least 6 feet. Now today, we can't do that. We have to wear a mask all day.
well, and don't forget, they also threw the wrench in the athletics as well. You know, they had said that
Right.
he came out of the blue and decided that all of a sudden said, I recommend that sports don't resume until January. Well, everybody was blindsided by that. They made us develop this extensive athletic plan, health and safety plan, at the end of June that we approved, and then a month or 2 later, he says we should cancel sports. Well, again, and he's still not making a decision. It's up in the air. Is this a recommendation you want to? It's up to you. You know, he's really passing the buck to all the school districts. So frustrating. I mean, I think you know where I feel.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
I think just backing up what Mr. Iglesias said, that we haven't seen the end of the changes coming and the mandates from the state. And I think to be successful, we have to keep open minds and be willing to bend and flex from what we want to do to what we can do. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. To, you know, go into if we go to a hybrid at the high school, and we would have an incident, it's at least minimizing the contact trace, and that's part of the protecting everybody from what's going on.
Yeah, another issue with that too, parents and taxpayers, and that's liability. There's no limited liability yet set up, even though it's been requested by the teachers for the governor. They haven't responded. Christine, would you mention what you did for us about liability as a school district? Would you mind?
I think with anything change in our society, there's always concern of people who will look to blame the district in the event there would perhaps be an outbreak. And so the legislature has asked for a very finite amount of where districts could not be found at fault for an outbreak, obviously, as long as they're following the data within their community and they're following recommendations and they're following the mask order. They couldn't be found at fault if for some reason the pandemic became, an outbreak in one of your elementary buildings. Districts have a protection and immunity statute under the law that protects them from certain actions. And so a claim against the school district in the event there was an outbreak would be something akin to negligence. You didn't make a reasonable decision. And I sent my child to school and my child was injured by contracting the COVID-19. So they do have immunity from that. What a district is not protected from is if there are willful misconduct, willful decisions to ignore advice and just say, I don't believe in this, I'm opening all our schools and forget masks and we all come in and we live our life as we knew it prior to March of 2019. If a district made that type of decision, I think it would be easy for an attorney to make a claim against the district because you can see that their decision making certainly wasn't reasonable. So that's kind of like where we are. So there certainly is protection under the school code, but there is a bill at the legislation right now trying to get the very protection from liability in response to all these pandemic decisions.
Dr. Harris, this is Bill Chastain. Last week, some concerned parents. Dr. Harris, this is Bill Chastain.
Yes, I'm here.
Last week, we had some concerned elementary parents bring some issues that I asked you to report back on. Be so kind to report back those answers, please.
Yes, I'm going to actually turn them over to Mr. Inglese regarding the cafeteria and some of the other concerns.
Yeah, the cafeteria was something that was, we discussed a little bit last week, and I did reach out to all the principals, and the cafeteria situation is a little different, the elementary versus the high school and middle schools, because the middle schools are able to utilize their gymnasiums and some other areas to help with the lunches, but now in the elementary, as you know, the gymnasiums are also their physical education classrooms, so it's kind of difficult to do that. But anyway, the cafeteria is used as a gymnasium as well. But anyway, we spoke to the elementary principals, and they had indicated that they're going to work on some different things to reduce the number of children in each of those cafeterias. Like specifically, I talked to Mr. Morasti. It's simple. All we need to do for him is get him 10 extra folding tables, and we're going to put a bunch of tables in the hall where kids are going to be able to eat, and he said that's doable. It's something that he can certainly handle. So that would reduce the number of kids in that cafeteria to less than 100. The capacity is about 150, so it'll be much more manageable to spread the kids out. Are we going to get 6 feet in every situation? I'm not going to lie to you, no, but we are going to spread them out further than what we initially planned on. Talked to Mr. DiNapoli at Level Green and Trafford. So at Level Green, they want to use the stage. He has some staggered lunches, the same thing with Sunrise. She plans to do the same, stagger some things a little bit. They have 5 lunches, so she has it all measured out at Sunrise. Mr. DiNapoli did the same thing. They're really looking at it to really spread them out and look at different ideas. Even at Harrison Park, Mr. Schwartz is looking at the possibility of using a couple classrooms to keep kids in there. Maybe the brown baggers would be able to go there, but every solution you seem to find, you just realize you create another problem, such as food allergies or a first grader being able to carry a lunch all the way down the hall. So those are things we're working through, but to your point, we are certainly looking at every single building on ways to spread kids out. And every building is a little bit different. They have different situation scenarios with their cafeteria. So it's better than it was last Monday.
And thank you, Mr. Inglesian. You also said there's much more flexibility at the middle school level.
Yeah, the middle school level, Mr. Simpson and Mr. Sullivan are using their libraries and their gymnasiums to put some of their brown bag lunch kids. So they are able to spread them out much better there. So they have a better plan to get kids separated in those buildings. And the high school is the same thing. We are going to use the gymnasium in the high school, in that hall, in the athletic lobby. There's a number of tables there already, so those kids are going to be spread out as well, as best we can.
There are still 400 at the high school for lunch, so even when we spread them out, there's still gonna be a lot of kids per room.
Yeah, approximately 400 minus 15 to 20% that don't come, so that does help, but we're going to spread them out as much as we can.
The possibility of reducing them further if we move to a blended model.
And at the high school, if we would move to a hybrid model, obviously that would cut that number in half, yes.
Dr. Harris, Phil Kachasik again. Going back to the elementary and the middle school buildings, any other thoughts on maybe keeping the students in the same classrooms and switching the teachers instead of having these kids in the hallways to lessen the chance of exposure?
We discussed that tonight. I know it was a concern because of how the supplies in the room, but I know the board was very strong in making a decision to keep the kids more into each classroom. And by doing so, it lessens the movement. So I do agree with you, and we are going to be working with the schedules of the principals to have more movement of teachers versus the kids. Because this way the kids do not, I call them kids, the students do not have to go back and forth between classrooms throughout the day.
There is a benefit of that too. There's less, remember, we only wipe down the desk whenever there's a transition. So a kid moves from desk to desk, so that would reduce that. If a kid's sitting at the same desk all day, you don't need to clean it all day, So that,
correct. And if it's your desk, no one else is, in some cases, no one else is sitting in it, it's yours and it's safer. Even though we do have cleaning and everything else put into effect, it just lessens the risk. I know the principals, when we ask them, all of them are ready to go as planned, K to 12, in all the elementary, the middle school, and the high school, and they will be ready for the first day of school. And I realize, I know Mr. Inglés and I talk about this all the time, the data really hasn't changed since we discussed this in June. I just think what has changed was the recommendations from the Department of Education, Department of Health, as well as the different requirements for what happens if we get a positive case in the schools. And you kind of clearly see them written there. So there are a lot of things to discuss tonight, and there's a lot of decisions to make regarding what we're going to do for the opening. And I realize the school is before, it's coming on the 27th, and I also realize that this information just came out to us. Because normally when we make a decision, we've completely done the survey approach, get the input, very successful. I know we have 80% of the parents of different buildings coming back, so that's great. But it just seems like the different restrictions that just came out, I would be worried about the high school going to it, having a case or an illness or an outbreak or all the things we have to put in place. And even if we went to something, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed for the whole month. It doesn't guarantee it's for the whole year. It could change easily based on the data. That is what I'm always saying. I don't want anyone to think we make a decision, it's the decision for the year. Or we don't make the decision someone agrees with, it's not going to be guaranteed for the whole entire year. It's very fluid. And I think there was a great article in the Trib the other day that talks about the school districts having to be fluid this year and having to be willing to adapt at any moment. Yes.
Dr. Costu has some.
I do have one question that I wanted to ask the group.
Sure.
Matt, we had talked about, well, actually two, I have two questions. One for Christina with regards to process, and another question with you with regards to Fridays and what our thoughts that we had talked about between, last Monday and then the recent announcements that it came up with regards to potential of how we would look at Fridays moving forward. That's one question for you, and then I'll give you a chance to answer it. But I also want to ask Christina, from a process perspective, if the decision with the recent announcements over the last 3 weeks for this board is to change our health and safety plan to allow for a hybrid or a blended educational experience at the high school because of the class sizes. What is the process that this group would need to undertake at today's meeting, knowing that school starts on the 27th? So, Matt, I'll let Christina answer first, and then you can sort of talk about Fridays,
Sure.
because I think Friday may play into some of our...
So the way the Department of Ed and the governor's office have set up, each school district is required to develop and submit, it has to be board approved, a health and safety plan. And Mr. Inglese mentioned that the district, the administrators and the board had worked on that beginning in June, and information has changed. So for tonight, if there was a motion that was entertained by the board to amend the previously submitted plan and put in the parameters as to where the board wants the plan to be amended, then you would direct administration to change the plan to reflect whatever that motion contains. And then it would be board approved, and the administration would then have authority from the board to submit that new plan to the Department of Ed. And that just needs to be in place prior to the start of school. You can't start school without submitting that plan.
Right. And with that it's not on the current agenda,
Right.
is there an opportunity for, from a board discussion, obviously, yes, but from a public comment perspective?
Yes.
What's the sequencing of that may, how would that sort of domino effect today? I guess if we were to discuss giving, because knowing school starts on the 27th, if at this point we're recommending or suggesting that we move to a hybrid at the high school, which has come up several times, and Matt had stressed his concern about the number of students that would be in classrooms at high school. This group is in favor of moving forward with that. What, does a motion made, somebody second, or questions called, and then there's opportunity for...
Public comment. So the motion would be, you're correct to state that it's not on your agenda, so it would have to be a motion that would be come out of the board's executive session, where the board received information about all of these new orders that Dr. Harris has been reviewing with those in attendance at the board meeting. It would require a second, and once you have a second, you then have to ask for public comment on the motion, rather than calling for the question for the board to vote on it, okay? That's because it's not on the agenda. It's something that can be done.
Cannot be part of the consent agreement.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, Matt, just as you discussed, and there was some discussion today at executive session, as well as, can you hear me, Matt?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I forgot to
Kind of thank you. I can hear you.
move the microphone. We also discussed the possibility of early on in the school year of how we may be able to use Act 80 days to help sort of smooth the transition back to the blended.
Definitely. We want the process to begin. We want the school to be done right. We have a great deal of things we're implementing this year. We are doing approach of online and in-person instruction, and we wanted to incorporate, to make sure it's done right, we have some staff and development and professional development time for the teachers. So we wanted to add our Act 80 days, and this is going to require shifting the calendar. We want to put them in the front of the year, but not to push back the start date. We want to actually add them to the Fridays and every other Friday in October, just so that way we can make sure that we're monitoring this and doing it right and giving the teachers enough prep time. Because we do have some classes that are going to, all of our classes are going to be mixed, hybrid, and, with the kids in full as well as the kids doing it online. So we want to make sure both programs are intact.
Matt, so you say Fridays, we're gonna start taking Fridays off. We're not gonna take the 28th off, are we?
No, we would actually do the Fridays in September, and these would react to 80 days, so they were still kind of a school day. But they would give the teachers a chance to prepare for both the blended and the, because they're doing both with the students in class and online, and we would make sure that it's done correctly. One of the, that was one of the concerns of the teachers. They had a couple different concerns with the model we were taking, and I agree with them actually, 100%, that it is a lot of work. And we were considering taking days off prior to the school year, but I was pushing the dates back, but I thought, what if we did the planning and something else came up? I'd rather have the time built in there so we can correct the issue as we go along and make it better.
Makes sense. All right, any more comments?
What is everyone's thoughts on either starting off with a hybrid at the high school or moving towards a hybrid at the high school?
Matt, I just need you to clarify for the parents. If we move toward the Act 80 days starting in September, that means there's no instruction on Friday, so it would be Monday through Thursday of some sort for our students.
If it's an actual Act 80 days, Act 80 days count, and you don't get too many during the year, but you do get some because they count as hours. But if we ever move to a different approach, sometimes it might be a hybrid. So if it's an Act 80 day, there's actually no instruction on that day, whether online or in school.
Thank you.
Yeah, the teachers would physically be in the school building. And just to clarify, we do have some tutors, fellows, SLAs who would be available on that day to help assist kids who may be struggling with their coursework. So that's an option on that day as well for those kids who need some extra help.
All right, any other comments?
Yes.
Like I said, I would have preferred to give this out, and I wish we would have had more time and notice, just so we have more comments from public and discussions as well, because I realize this is a matter, but again, this came and with looking at the recommendations and the school district as a whole, it's just kind of hard to make that decision and by giving a great deal of input, because we're basically doing it based on the recommendations of the state and the Department of Health.
All right, so that being said, I'll ask the question, are there any motions out of executive session?
Yes, Madam President. This is a recommendation from the Governor and Department of Health. Motion to amend the health and safety plan to have the secondary high school students attend a hybrid schedule. The students will be split into two separate groups according to the alphabet. Of course, the numbers will be different, but approximately 8 a.m. and N to Z. And the schedules will be Monday and Wednesday, and Tuesday and Thursday, with Friday, all students online except Act 30 days, online at home. K-8 will remain as in school from Monday through...
Fridays. The Fridays, as I've written it, is to say they're at home, online at home doing work. I mean, if you're having a hybrid, they're not in all days, so you have to do something with that Friday. I understand you have Act 80 days, but when all your Act 80 days are over, what does that Friday become?
Then that's education.
It's a at-home, online,
Yes.
do your homework type of day.
Well, yeah, I mean, on Fridays, the kids are not going to be physically in school, but they could certainly continue with any homework or assignments that they wish to pursue if they didn't get it done for the previous 4 days, yes.
And that's why it's written online at home.
Okay.
Except for Act...
And understanding that you have an Act 80 days scheduled, so that doesn't mean to conflict with your Act 80 schedule.
Yeah, Act 80, like Mr. Kachasik asked, Act 80 days are non-instructional days.
Right.
Okay, K-8 will remain in school Monday through Friday. Fridays online except at home except for Act 80 days. Of course, there could be student assistance then too, if necessary by the teacher. The school start date will still remain August 27th, Administration is authorized to submit an amendment plan to the Pennsylvania Department of Education consistent with this motion. And we will do some reevaluating it on the 8th of our next meeting, September 8th.
Second.
Question? The question I would ask is, this would be no different, Christina, than if we were modifying the plan 2 weeks from now, correct? We would go back, or we would need to relook at the health and safety plan again. This is as it stands today. It doesn't limit us from making changes a week from now, or 2 weeks from now, or 3 weeks from now.
It
Depending on the
just,
next board meeting that is.
you're right, Dr. Klatchko, because the way the governor and the Department of Education submitted these templates for these health and safety plans, it was with the understanding that districts were more than likely going to have to come in and revise them and change them. And they did when the governor issued that mask mandate. Because prior, districts who had submitted their health plans prior to that did not include masks. Then once the mandate came in, they had to amend it to include the mask order. So they're certainly meant to be fluid documents with the understanding that the board must always approve any
Correct.
changes.
Thank you.
And Scott, Dr. Koshko, that's the nice thing about the school board meeting in September. We can start off with a hybrid approach, and then this way we get enough parents and input we can see and follow what happens up in September. Because like I said, we didn't really give enough notice to the parents for that discussion and comments.
Mr. Petrucci, to clarify that motion, could you read it one more time? I think we just want to make sure we understand it correctly.
Good, you're good, Christina. All right.
Particularly the part on when the K through 8 students will be in the building.
Monday through Thursday?
I think he said Monday through Friday.
No, you referenced that, again, there's that Act 80 Friday.
Act 80,
Fine, I just was clarifying.
Yeah, that side, yes.
Yeah, I think to clarify, what we're talking about, I think the board is recommending that with the high school only, not K through 8, but the high school only would move to a hybrid model where students would be coming to school Monday and Wednesday for half the alphabet, then the other half of the alphabet would be coming Tuesday, Thursday. So every child would be receiving instruction every single day. It just may be in school or online, depending on the day. And it would be split by half the alphabet. And every Friday, they would be off, and the Fridays would be time for teachers to develop their online lessons, their in-school lessons, develop recorded lessons, things of that nature. So just to be clear, we would have to take a look at the alphabet, see where it's about halfway, and bring those kids in on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then they would also receive instruction on Tuesdays and Thursdays online. Is that how everybody received?
Other than Act 80 days, they would be.
Other than Act 80 days,
They're receiving stuff online.
they could be given review and reinforcement, doing their homework, things of that nature, and we would have some tutors available to assist them if they needed some help.
But not on Act 80 days, they would be getting instruction. Only on Act 80 days do they have access to the teachers.
Teachers would all be online. If they're a high school teacher and the activities, they're all online available on that Friday.
I see, yes, point well taken. Whenever the Act 80 days expire, is what you're saying, yes, yes, yes.
This was the first month, we discussed having them every Friday, and then
Right.
going into the second month, it'd be every other.
I understand,
Kids
yeah.
would be online 3 days a week.
In,
The Act 80 days.
come November, yes, yes. Or any other day, there's not an Act 80 day, yes,
Except those 2 Fridays in October.
correct.
Subject to change, fluid document.
And again, I think we're gonna,
Is Monday through Friday, is that what K to 8 is?
K to 8 is going to continue as the instructional model that we presented, last week and prior to that. Other than the Act 80 days. Act 80 days is going to change though, on Fridays.
Okay. So with that clarification, do you still maintain that motion?
Yes, I
Mr.
do.
Petrucci? And then who seconded it?
Rich.
Mr. Neiman.
Are you okay with that clarification on your motion? Okay. And now you can ask for public comment.
Yeah, at this time, I'd like to ask for public comment.
Oh.
on the motion, right?
The motion.
On the motion.
Motion.
Going to do, are we just doing a, pulling the board, or are we doing a,
No, she has to pull the board. No, good, Tony?
Mrs. Issing, should I pull the board?
Yes, I'm sorry, I had a really hard time hearing there.
you were just asking if you should be pulling the board, so,
Yes,
all right, great.
Okay, on the motion, Mrs. Issing,
aye.
Mr.
Agree.
Kachasik,
Yes.
Dr. Koshko,
Yes.
Mr. Dallas Leonard,
Yes.
Mr. Matarazzo,
Yes.
Mr. Nemec,
Yes.
Mr. Petrucci,
Yes.
Mr. Stovar.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Lego.
You're welcome.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to open it up. Oh, Dr. Harris, did you have any more information?
No, the bus postcard, you should have received it. I know my boys got theirs in the mail today. You should have received your bus postcard. And we will send a follow-up detailed letter out to the parents tomorrow regarding the hybrid approach to the high school. I do realize it is a sudden change based on the information we got. Like I said before, we will give you time to address at the September board meeting as well some concerns as we continue the process of looking at the hybrid. But that is all I have at this time.
All right, thank you, Dr. Harris. I also like to mention, I apologize for joining by Zoom. We had a urgent situation come up and I had to go babysit. So I'm gonna make it back in time for the meeting. All right, at this time, I'd like to, we'll do audience recognition. You must state your name, address, and group affiliation, if any. Your statement will be limited to 5 minutes in duration. All statements shall be directed to the president, and no participant may address or question a board member individually. You may be interrupted if your statement is too lengthy, personally direct, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. I have one resident who has asked to speak, and it's Carrie Palladino. You there?
Could you come to the podium, please, the mic?
Pretty loud, I don't really. Okay. I had to write it down because I'm not really a good public speaker, so. My name's Carrie Palladino, and I just wanted to thank you guys, the board members, for your service and the opportunity to address you tonight. And I'm speaking on behalf of my children and the children of the 89% of the parents who believe it's absolutely the right thing to do in opening our schools again. Tonight, I want to discuss to you the concerning issue that will be affecting all our children, and that's the issue of wearing the masks for 7 hours out of the day. They're not familiar with this activity, and they have been preventing the spread of COVID by washing their hands and not touching their faces as recommended by the CDC, and staying home when they are sick. These are the guidelines that got us through the swine flu, a national pandemic that killed 1,800 children in the U.S., and no schools were shut down and no masks were mandated. It was also the CDC that reported children had low levels of infectivity and infectiousness. Please note, respected healthcare officials conducted in-depth and lengthy tests of workers in Hanoi and Vietnam to address how effective mask wearing was preventing the disease of the infectious flus and viruses. And the outcome was wearing cloth masks experienced the 97% rate of increase of infections. Those wearing a surgical mask experienced a 44% rate of higher infections as well. Their study resulted in issuing a caution against wearing masks due to the following: a moisture retention, the reuse of masks, and poor filtration. They may result in complete risk of infection. Pleurisy and skin infections are also occurring, and our children will be breathing in their own CO2 for 7 hours a day. And this is, as a parent, a very concerning, as a parent and a loving mother, as their bodies are still developing. It is, in fact, they're opposing scientific studies on the effectiveness of wearing masks. We are only listening to one side of this because it's now being politicized. There are other states not mandating this for their children. So before we place this risky burden on our children, proper discussion and studies must be done and brought before the legislature to make it a law, not a political mandate. Remember, in January 2020, the CDC was against wearing masks, and in March 2020, Dr. Fauci stated masks were not necessary as they may prevent just one droplet from being released. Now the CDC recommends wearing one, and they can't mandate it. The science isn't there. The governor himself cannot mandate it. This is something that should and must go through legislative process to review the ongoing science. It is not emotional or political. It is emotional and political agendas. And we ask that you permit families to choose whether or not to have a child wear a mask. In the past, this governor is using, this governor is using extreme mandates under his state of emergency status. And as of today, per my conversation with the Westmoreland County governor, or Westmoreland County coroner, has experienced 44 deaths out of 368,562 people. 30 of those deaths were elderly people in 3 different nursing homes. That is 0.01% of our population. This is not a moderate or state of emergency. Why we are forcing extreme measures upon our children, we have to remember it was the CDC that reported children have very low levels of infectivity. And I will finish by saying this. Future generations will judge us, not by what we say, but by what we do. Did we protect our freedoms as well? Did we use our freedoms or did we lose them? Did we challenge those in power to safeguard our liberties as outlined by our Constitution? I am so grateful to be an American and live in this township. I'm equally alarmed by the apathy and silence in light of recent erosions of our freedoms. Please do not get comfortable, moms and dads and leaders. Please do not let the light burn out on your watch. Aren't our children worth fighting for? Take a stand and watch others follow your lead. And please take a stand for our kids. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Palladino. My only response is that we will certainly, your video, your speech will be available to people to watch, the legislature, the senators, the governor. We are doing what we have to because of the state mandate. Whether we agree with it or not is not really our decision because we are mandated to do this. Anyone want to add anything else?
I appreciate your sentiments that unfortunately with us, it's the Department of Education that we take our direction from. And having to be accountable and responsible to the Department of Education is the issue we have to deal with. But totally appreciate your sentiments and points that you brought up. Thank you very, very much for doing that.
Thank you very much. Okay, all right, time to move into old business. Any old business tonight?
None this evening, Madam President.
Okay, Mrs. Lane, you want to comment on the executive session?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. The board convened for an executive session on August 17th at 5:15 to discuss contracts and negotiations, school security and safety, attorney advisory, and litigation matters. The board also received information on the governor's recent recommendations for mask guidance and instructional models. At
Christina, could you get, we need a mic on you. Sorry.
I apologize. The board convened for an executive session on August 17th at 5:15 p.m. to discuss contracts, negotiations, school security and safety, attorney advisory, and litigation matters. The board also received information on the governor's recent recommendations for the wearing of masks and instructional models. At the start of this board meeting, the board went into executive session to again discuss personnel and legal advisory matters, and they continued to receive information on health and safety recommendations from the Department of Ed. And that executive session was held between 7:05 and 7:35 this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Lane. Okay, at this point, we're going to move into the consent agenda portion of our meeting. Does the board wish to remove any items from the consent agenda?
Madam President, this is Phil Kachasik. Can you clarify where the consent agenda will end and anything else begin?
Well, first of all, I believe that we've been asked to remove from the consent agenda athletics and extracurricular, okay? And personnel and curriculum. Anything else asked to be removed?
So would that include item P?
Item E, did you say?
P is in Paul, P is in Phil.
Okay, P is in Phil. Okay, hold on. I gotta go down and find item P. All right. Lot of items to go through. All right, personnel, that's that one. Where's
Yeah,
Substitute teachers and support personnel.
right, we were just gonna do that as listed, for the sake of
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
We're not gonna list all the substitute teachers.
So, so for clarification, under item P, that's the approval of substitute teachers and additional staff. Is that right, Mr. Lego?
Yes.
I will be abstaining. I will approve the rest of the consent agenda motion, but I will abstain from P. I just want that on public record.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Kachasik. All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. I'm gonna go back to that page. Sorry. All right. All right. So, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items excluding, I'm sorry, I don't have the extra, athletics and extracurricular and personnel and curriculum under one motion.
I would make a motion, Dallas here, to approve the consent agenda items A through Y as listed on our agenda.
Okay. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Question being called for?
Question.
All right, this will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? All right, motion carried. Okay, so that drops us down. I gotta find the page, I'm so sorry. Down to personnel and,
No athletics.
pardon me?
Athletics, extracurricular. Mr. Madam
Number
What page is
six.
that on?
It's number 6.
Item number 6.
Number 6. It's,
Okay.
2 pages from the end.
On pages not numbered.
All right, and I'm gonna pass that on to Mr. Matarazzo.
Thank you, Madam President. Give a little background on this particular motion. On an annual basis, the Board of School Directors approves a list of individuals for athletic and extracurricular positions for the current school year. The salary is established by the collective bargaining agreement. Following board approval, the superintendent notifies each individual of the award of the position for the current school year. The board seeks to clarify its position that the approval is on an annual basis for the current school year. These positions do not automatically renew and do require board approval on an annual basis. So the motion is to approve the following fall athletic positions and full-year extracurricular positions as listed. Salaries are determined in accordance with the negotiated agreement. New employment is contingent upon the receipt of all necessary documentation and the acceptance of the Act 34, Act 151, and Act 114 waivers from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania within 30 days.
Second.
Question.
Okay, question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Matarazzo.
Thank you,
All right, turn it over to Mr. Petrucci for personnel and curriculum.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to employ the following personnel, new employment contingent upon receipt of all necessary documentation and acceptance of Act 34, 151, 114 waivers from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania within 30 days. A copy of the personal list will become an official part of the minutes of this meeting. Christy Drew, Student Learning Assistant. Julie Kessler, Student Learning Assistant. And Marina Ferrari, Student Learning Assistant, at the salary, those three, of $29,000 a year. George State, Custodian, to be determined when he's going to start that, effective August 17th, at the rate of $15.20 an hour. Tiffany Ott and Alicia Suzman. Tiffany will be a social studies tutor at Penn Trafford High School, effective August 27th through May 28th, $110 a day. And Alicia Susan, a math tutor at Penn Trafford High School, effective August 27th through May 28th, 2021, at the rate of $110 a day.
Second. Question.
Okay, question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Okay, now move to confirm the following change in 2020-21 school calendar, and we've discussed this very thoroughly. Every Friday in September and every other Friday in October, act 80 days for the teachers to reevaluate how everything's going with the new curriculums coming on, especially now since we went hybrid in senior high school. I think this is very good. It also helped it really benefit, in my opinion, benefit the students. As listed.
Question.
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
That's all I have, Madam President.
All right, thank you. Motion carried, by the way. All right, at this time, solicitors report?
Hi, no report, thank you.
All right, at this time, I would like a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Second. A motion for adjournment at this